Hey, I was just hey, keep the microphone closer where you can hear me. I was just clipping my fingernails and thinking about culture. And people sometimes may think of culture as something to be free from, but we clip our fingernails and they grow back, and we get haircuts, and unless we're bald, we get haircuts and then it grows back, and in culture, we have like certain kinds of behavior get trimmed or pressured, and some are nurtured, some are restrained, restricted. Legal systems, correctional systems, criminal justice systems, and just like general things like this whole new thing the last few thousand years of wearing clothing. All sorts of cultural distinctions, including technology, obviously, like the internet, electronics, all that. But sometimes people make reference to, including me, I've made reference to being free of culture or being free of society, free from culture. And what I was noticing while I was clipping my fingernails is that things, will keep growing. We can trim here and we can say, okay, I'm going to be free of this thing of culture. Well, culture is going to show up again. There's some other culture will develop, some other trend, some other fad, fashion, whatever. And culture is also a little bit like the trimming of the fingernails. It goes, it has its restraining function in terms of one thing. Well, we'll say with clothing. Clothing might have originally been for warmth or for protection. I was reading something yesterday. In the Middle Ages, the thick cotton clothing was actually really adaptive because it would reduce the transmission of the bubonic plague. For people who had really heavy, thick clothing, it would be healthier, which I had never thought of and never considered. But basically, by keeping the individuals separate from each other, more so than if they had a lot of skin-to-skin contact, like shaking hands or something, or hugging, by having people, have their clothes be thick and cover them fully, kind of like I think of Muslim culture. So much Muslim cultures have really a lot of fabric covering the body, but keeps people shielded from the sun, but also from contagious diseases. They don't get spread out, and they don't get let in if people are covered in really, well-made, thick fabric, for instance. So this was a pattern that was apparently recognized at some point in the Middle Ages, and might have been accidentally discovered. Some people with lots of thick clothing were not having these issues, and people that were wearing, I don't know what else, but maybe button-up things that weren't, that had just more openness to the clothing. The open clothing, the kinds of fabric that, like knit wool, has a lot of gaps in it, but tighter fabrics, are just simply more of a shield or barrier to airflow or something. So anyway, there were some distinctions in terms of the health impact of clothing and textiles, fabric, and we could call that culture. Language is culture. Technology is culture. Fingernail clippers, that is culture. Culture. The trimming of the fingernails, that's also a cultural pattern. So being free of culture, what's going on with that? I say that there's no such thing as being free of culture. There's being responsible for culture. There's lots of cultures. There's not just one human culture. There's lots of them. And there's no such thing as being free of it. The idea I'm going to be free of culture is a cultural fad. And we can be free of elements of culture. We can say, hey, you know what? used to wear earrings, and now I'm going to take them off and not wear earrings anymore. Or I used to have long hair, and now I'm going to get it cut. Or I used to paint my fingernails, and now I'm going to not paint them anymore. Okay, we can stop doing certain things, but we can't. I don't know that it's favorable to think in terms of I'm going to be free of the English language. It's just kind of a silly thing to say. People aren't ever free of culture. They're going to interact with other people, and it's going to influence the behavior of all the people in the interaction. I think what's going on more when people say I want to be free of culture is they actually want some to withdraw and have some privacy and have some security maybe that they don't feel. Maybe there's a discomfort with being around lots of people or certain people a lot. And they just want more privacy. They want more security in a certain sense. They want to relax. So that's totally fine. So if someone says I want to be free of culture, I think it's a little bit of a weird thing to say, but there's something, of course, valid that would have them say those words, and I've said those words. So culture is something that we as humans take with us. We create. When two people get together, culture shows up. Or culture gets created if there's not already a culture in common between the two or more people that are interacting. Then I think of things like agriculture and horticulture and so forth. It may not even be specific to humans. We can use the word to refer to how a human interacts with land and soil and cultivates something, cultures something, like farmland or a garden. So we're just culture machines. We're just culture, channels. We show up and culture's there. They're not free of culture. They're being responsible for culture. And there's totally common and totally understandable that sometimes people would want to withdraw from certain cultural elements, or even from one culture and maybe shift towards another culture. Like, somebody gets into a certain genre of music. I think about teenagers. Of course, teenagers have a different culture than little kids. Little kids do nursery rhymes, and then they do, cartoons and just silly things. And then the culture shifts as people age. They change from that culture of really little kids to a culture of teenagers and all the socializing and chemistry and everything that goes on, hormones, chemistry, all the stuff that goes on physically and socially in the culture of teenage years, and then in the culture of adulthood, or the culture of retirees or elders. We have different cultures that we pass through in a way. We could say those are all distinct subcultures, let's say. So when someone says I want to be free of culture, maybe what they're saying is I'm open to a new subculture. I'm open to creating or participating in some new pattern, new form. Maybe I want to paint my fingernails, and I've never painted them before. Maybe I want to get an earring. Those are cultural artifacts and adornments, and they're fine. Maybe I want to learn a new language, travel to a new place, meet new people. Okay, I guess it's a willingness. I want to be free of culture. Means I'm willing to be. Maybe that's what it means. I'm willing to be responsible for culture, but somebody maybe hasn't developed their clarity or language as to what it is really that they do want. They know that there's something attractive to them that isn't fulfilled by the culture as they know it. Maybe they're a teenager who's growing out of the culture of teenagers, or a little kid who's saying, no, I don't like Barney anymore. I don't like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles anymore. That's kid stuff. And once a 7-year-old starts to talk about baby stuff or kid stuff, they're growing out of a culture. I want to be free of that culture. Okay, it's being responsible and willing to explore new cultural developments. So that's what I have to say Remember, it'll grow back. You can trim it. It will grow back, unless you're bald. In which case, you can get new implants, cultivate new hair, all that stuff. Beware of being silly, by the way. It's very dangerous.